Welcome to my presentation on human immunity. First, I'm going to look at the defence system. The first line of defence system includes the skin. This prevents microbial organisms from invading the body. It prevents toxins being absorbed and prevents water loss. Skin is an impervious layer, contains biochemical agents that help defend the skin. The diagram on the right shows the skin. Another part of the first line of defence is the mucous membrane. It lines the surface of the eyes, ears, nose and sinuses and mouth. It prevents pathogens and allergens from entering the body and is coated with secretions that form a defence barrier. Looking at the diagram, we can see the types of mucous membranes. We have tears that wash away irritating substances and microbes. We've got the skin that provides a physical barrier to the entrance of microbes. Large intestine, which has the normal bacteria inhabitants that keep invaders in check. The saliva washes microbes from the teeth and mucous membranes of the mouth. The respiratory tract mucus traps organisms and the cilia sweep away trapped organisms. We've got the stomach, where acid kills organisms, and the bladder, where urine washes microbes from the urethra. The next part of the first line of defence we're going to look at is the nasal cavity and the airways. Pathogens enter the nasal cavity, get stuck to the mucous lining which is located inside the nose. These pathogens are then released whilst blowing your nose. Pathogens are further released by the rhythmical movement of the cilia in the lining of the airways. The diagram there shows the nasal cavity and the airways. Another part of the body's first line of defence is the gastrointestinal system. The gastrointestinal system provides a series of barriers against infection. Firstly, we have the stomach acids, which make it difficult for bacteria to survive. We then have the harmful microorganisms that are removed by the intestine contractions. The small intestine contains a higher pH level, which is capable of killing most bacteria except typhoid and cholera. The diagram there shows the gastrointestinal system. We're now going to look at the urinary tract. The bowel is then protected by the urethra. When you empty your bladder regular, this helps prevent infections. It does this by flushing out the bacteria. The female urethra is shorter, which results in external bacteria passing onto the bladder, which can cause urinary tract infections. Females during pregnancy have an increased risk of urinary tract infections. After 6 months, the male's urethra becomes long enough for the bacteria to pass through to the bladder and to be flushed out during urination. The diagram at the below shows the male and the female urinary tracts. We're now going to look at the female genital tract. Lactobacilli is found in the vagina, and it can metabolize glycogen in cervical secretions forming lactic acid. The acidity in the vagina prevents harmful bacteria from growing, and the acidity maintains the number of protective bacteria. In the female genital tract, before puberty and after the menopause, the estrogen production is generally lower. This can result in an increased exposure to harmful bacteria. Looking at the diagram there, it shows the female genital tract. The next part is the second line of defence. The first part to this is inflammation. Inflammation can be caused by an injury to the skin. When cells become damaged by pathogens, they then become inflamed. Inflammation is caused by an increase in blood circulation and dilated blood vessels in the affected area. Symptoms of inflammation are when the area becomes red and hot to touch. You may experience pain or swelling in that area. Looking at the diagram there, we can see the inflammation, which shows as a more pink reddy colour. I'm now going to be talking about phagocytosis and macrophages. Phagocytosis is the ingestion of bacteria or other material by phagocytes, and amoeboid protozoans. During the inflammation stage, monocytes become macrophages, which then target the cells that need eliminating. When the pathogen is surrounded, the cellular enzyme inside the macrophage destroys the particle. This is why macrophages are an important part of the body's defense system. Macrophages can also modify themselves and form a different structure in order to combat certain infections. Antigens. Antigens are responsible for informing the body that it is under attack, which then causes the immune response to kick in. Antigen substance is a substance that is capable of stimulating an immune response, specifically activating lymphocytes, which are the body's infection-fighting white blood cells. There are two main divisions of antigens, which are foreign antigens and autoantigens. The diagram there shows what antigens do through their cycle. I'm now going to talk about acquired immunity. So what is acquired immunity? Well, acquired immunity is the immunity that our body gains over time, similar to how an individual gains the knowledge over time. It's our body's way of learning how to target and destroy specific pathogens, only when these pathogens invade our body. This knowledge and action performed by the body forms the acquired immunity. It is introduced into the body via two ways. It can actively be introduced to the body via exposure to a foreign antigen via vaccination, or it can be passively via preformed antibodies that are introduced into the body. We're now going to look further into white blood cells and their roles. So we're going to look at the four white blood cells, which are the lymphocytes, basophils, neutrophils, and eosinophils. So looking at lymphocytes, these are present in lymphatic tissue such as tonsils and lymph nodes. They create antibodies that animate memory cells that remember a previous infection. Basophils contain histamine that dilates the blood vessels, which allow the immune cells to quickly find an infection. Neutrophils are the first cells to arrive at the site of infection by moving along the blood vessels and are responsible for the release of cytokines, which are small proteins which attract further immune cells. Cytokines are also enhance the immune system by signalling, assisting, and resolving the inflammation and immunity. And lastly, eosinophils release toxins that kill pathogens such as worms and parasites. An allergic reaction will show as a higher eosinophils count. Now I'm going to talk about the types of cells, B cells and T cells, and their functions. B cells are also known as B lymphocytes. They're a type of white blood cell of the small lymphocyte subtype. B cells have two main functions within their immune response. One is to produce antibodies, and two is to be present antigens to T cells and signal for T cell activation. T cells release specific substances into the blood and signal B cells through contact. They activate cells that can consume foreign substances. They signal growth in cells, macrophages, and eosinophils. There are three types of T cell. Cytotoxin, this defends the body against viruses. Cytotoxin T cell attaches to the cell, releases protein and causes it to self-destruct. Then we have the suppressor. It suppresses the functions of helper and cytotoxic T cells. This is done by stopping other immune cells to cause damage to the body's own tissues. Therefore, it's important in preventing against autoimmune defense. Then we have the helper. This releases lymphokines to control other parts of the immune system by stimulating the other types of T cells to grow and attack. I'm now going to move on to immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulin is a type of protein that helps the body fight disease. It can also be known as antibodies. Antibodies' functions include activation of mast cells. They stimulate cells that can eat foreign substances. They complement activation. They're responsible for the neutralization of toxins. They help target infections, and they help with the removal of antigens. There are 5 types of immunoglobulin. Type 1 is immunoglobulin G. and is passed down from the placenta to the fetus and provides protection. Type 2 is immunoglobulin A, which holds a vital role in the cellular defense. Type 3, immunoglobulin M, first immunoglobulin synthesized in an antibody response. Type 4 is immunoglobulin E, which is present in low levels but increases during parasitic infection or an allergic reaction. Then we have type 5, immunoglobulin D. The function of this immunoglobulin is still unknown. The diagram shows the types of immunoglobulin. We're now moving on to own tissue self-recognition and tolerance to own tissue. The body needs to differentiate between what is and what isn't part of it. Examples of this are known what is a foreign body or bacteria. The body is able to recognise its own antigens. Red blood cells usually have types of antigens which the immune system recognises as being self, and it will not send a signal back to attack. When the immune system comes across an antigen it does not recognise as a self, B cells and T cells deal with this. Autoimmunity is a failed response to the adaptive immune system to self-antigens. So what can happen with the failure of self-tolerance? The ability to discriminate between self and non-self antigens is vital to the functioning of the immune system as a specific defence against invading microorganisms. Failure of the immune system to tolerate self-tissues can result in pathological autoimmune status, leading to debilitating illnesses and sometimes even death. There are 4 categories of hypersensitivity. Type 1, which involve IgE antibodies that initially sensitise an individual to an allergen and provoke a quick inflammatory response upon subsequent exposure. Allergies and hay fever are both type 1. Type 2 involve the binding of IgG and IgM antibodies to antigens on cell surfaces. This induces a cascade of events that leads to cell death. Hemolytic transfusion reactions and hemolytic diseases of newborns are type 2 reactions. Type 3 result from the formation of antigen-antibody complexes that settle on tissues and organs. In an attempt to remove these complexes, underlying tissue is also damaged. Serum sickness and rheumatoid arthritis are examples of type 3 reactions. Lastly, we have type 4. It's regulated by T cells and are delayed reactions of antigens associated with cells. Tuberculin reactions, chronic asthma, and contact dermatitis are examples of type 4 reactions. What is organ donation? Organ donation takes healthy organs and tissues from one person for transplantation into another. Experts say that organs from one donor can save or help as many as 50 people. Organs that you can donate include internal organs such as kidneys, heart, liver, pancreas, intestines and lungs. But what can happen if the body rejects this? Well, transplant rejection occurs when transplanted tissue is rejected by the recipient's immune system, which destroys the transplanted tissue. Transplant rejection can be lessened by determining the molecular stimulant between donor and recipient, and by use of immunosuppressant drugs after transplant. Looking at the diagram there, we can see that a single donor can save up to 8 lives through donation. You can save or heal more than 100 lives through tissue donation. Looking now at autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases can be caused by the following items. It could be due to drugs, could be environmental irritants or chemical irritants, could be caused by bacteria or viruses. Autoimmune disorders can also run in the family. Symptoms can include inflammation, fevers, low fevers, muscle aches and muscle pains. There are many types of autoimmune diseases, including Addison's disease, celiac disease, dermatomyositis, Graves' disease, multiple sclerosis, reactive arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes. I'm now going to have a look at 2 in greater detail. The first one I've chosen to look at is multiple sclerosis. So what is multiple sclerosis? This is a chronic, typically progressive disease involving damage to the sheaths of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. whose symptoms may include numbness, impairment of speech and of muscular coordination, blurred vision, and severe fatigue. The immune system attacks the myelin sheath and potentially the surrounding nerves, resulting in messages travelling between the nerves becoming slower or disruptive. Those suffering with multiple sclerosis may have fatigue, difficulty walking. They may have blurred vision, other visual problems. They may also have problems controlling their bladder. They can suffer with numbness and tingling in different parts of the body. They may also have muscle stiffness and spasms. They may have problems with thinking, learning and planning, alongside balance and coordination. The next one I'm going to look at is systemic lupus. It's a long-term condition causing inflammation to the joints, skin and other organs. There's no cure, but symptoms can improve if treatment starts early. The main symptoms are joint pain and stiffness, extreme tiredness and skin rashes. Alongside the above, symptoms may also include weight loss, swollen glands, sensitivity to light, poor circulation in fingers and toes. The production of autoantibodies in people with lupus and other autoimmune diseases causes the immune system to target the body's own cells. For example, around 98% of people with lupus possesses anti-nuclear antibodies which attack the nucleic material of your cells. Immunity is a condition of being able to resist a particular disease, especially through preventing development of pathogenic microorganism or by counteracting the efforts of its products. It is the ability of the body to resist harmful microorganisms or viruses by entering it. There are four types: innate, which is the natural immunity; adaptive, which is an acquired immune system; active immunity; and passive immunity. The diagram there shows the various acquired immunity types. Vaccination and immunological memory. Immunological memory is the ability of the immune system to respond with greater vigour upon re-encounter with the same pathogen and constitutes the basis for vaccination. Vaccination is a biological mixture that resembles a disease-causing agent. It is given to help the body create immunity to a particular disease. There is a great importance of vaccination programs as detailed on this slide. Just looking at a few, we can see why they are so important. Vaccines are the most effective way to prevent infectious diseases. They get safety tested for years before being introduced. Vaccination is the most important thing that we can do to protect ourselves and our children against ill health. If people stop having vaccinations, it is possible for infectious diseases to quickly spread again. We're going to look at measles now. Measles dates back to the 17th century. Globally, it's one of the most common causes of death in young children and is used to kill thousands of children in Britain. In 1968, a vaccine was introduced into Britain and the number of cases began to fall steadily. As you can see by the key dates below, in 1940 the death rate was 857, but in 2016 the death rate was only 1. Again, the infection rates from 1940 to 2016 are greatly reduced. Looking at the table on the right, you can see the reduction in cases. Herd immunity is a form of indirect protection from infectious disease that occurs when a large percentage of the population has become immune to infection. Each disease requires a different level of uptake within the population to provide herd immunity. It can effectively stop the spread of disease in the community. The table shows the herd immunity threshold for some of the types of diseases mentioned. We've now reached the end of my presentation on human immunity. Thank you for watching.